My name is Evelyn Parker. I'm 68 years old, and I used to think that family meant unconditional love. That illusion broke one night over a dinner I wasn't invited to. My daughter-in-law, Rachel, had just received a major promotion at her company. She booked a table for 10 at an upscale restaurant to celebrate her mother, her siblings, her friends, everyone, except me. I didn't find out from them, but from social media. While they toasted with wine and laughter, I was at home ironing my son Brian's shirts and folding my grandchildren's clothes. I kept glancing at my phone, hoping they might call, maybe say, "Mom, come join us." Instead, a message arrived from Rachel at 9:40 p.m. "Mother-in-law, remember to heat up the leftovers in the fridge. Don't waste them." That single line hit harder than any insult. I stared at my bowl of soup, the only meal I'd made for myself that night, and something inside me cracked. I opened Instagram. There they were, Brian in the white shirt I'd ironed that morning, Rachel glowing in her red dress, my grandchildren posing with shrimp and fries. Even Rachel's mother was there. The caption read, "Celebrating my queen's promotion, cheers to women who never stop." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in the silence, realizing how small I'd become in their world. They didn't see me as family anymore, just a background figure keeping the house running. That night, I wiped the table clean, turned off the lights, and whispered to myself, "No more." Because what they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for months. And when they came home, they would find out that the woman they had taken for granted wasn't as powerless as they thought. To understand why that night changed everything, you need to know how I ended up there in a home that looked perfect from the outside but slowly erased me from the inside. 3 years earlier, my husband David passed away from pancreatic cancer. We had spent 42 years together in a modest suburban house filled with memories, birthdays, laughter, and long Sunday breakfasts. When he died, silence filled every corner. 2 weeks after the funeral, Brian came to visit with Rachel. He held my hand and said, "Mom, you shouldn't be alone. We found a beautiful house with space for everyone. If you sell this place, you can move in with us. You'll never be lonely again." It sounded comforting. I sold my home and gave them most of the proceeds, $68,000 for the down payment. The new house was big, modern, and cold. And though we all moved in together, I soon realized I wasn't part of their family anymore. I was their housekeeper with free rent. I woke up before dawn, made breakfast, packed lunches, did laundry, and cleaned until my hands ached. Rachel inspected every corner when she got home. "Mother-in-law, the mirrors have streaks," she'd say. "Mother-in-law, you use too much detergent again." "Never, Evelyn, never, Mom, just mother-in-law," like a label for unpaid help. Brian stopped noticing. He'd thank me without looking up, already late for work. The kids still hugged me, Michael and Lily, they were my only light. But even that became a problem. Once, Lily said, "Grandma, I love you more than Mommy." That night I heard shouting behind closed doors. From then on, Rachel kept her distance. Family photos never included me. At Christmas, she handed me the camera. "You take it, mother-in-law, your hands are steadier." That's when I understood. I hadn't moved in with my family. I had moved into a job, one that didn't even come with respect. By the 3rd year, I had become invisible in that house. I knew every creak of the floorboards, every stain on the kitchen tiles, every word Rachel used to disguise contempt as politeness. Then came the morning that pushed me past the edge. Rachel walked downstairs glowing with excitement, her phone pressed to her ear. "I got it," she shouted. "Regional Operations Manager." Brian rushed in, kissed her, and lifted her off the ground. The kids cheered. I was by the stove, flipping pancakes, smiling sincerely. "Congratulations, Rachel," I said. She barely glanced at me. "Thanks, mother-in-law." Brian clapped his hands. "We have to celebrate. Dinner at the Skyline Grill tonight." "The one with the city view," Rachel said proudly. "My mom's joining too." I hesitated. "Should I make the reservation?" I asked quietly. Rachel's smile froze. "Oh no, it's an intimate dinner, just family." I stood there, spatula in hand, pretending that word family didn't cut through me like glass. "Someone has to stay home," Rachel added, "and you cook so well. There are leftovers in the fridge." Brian didn't defend me. He kissed my forehead quickly, said, "Don't wait up, Mom," and left with the kids. By nightfall, the house was silent. I sat at the kitchen table with instant soup, the cheapest kind, while the people I'd given my life to dined on $100 plates and wine. Out of habit, I opened Instagram. There they were again, laughing, sparkling, living their perfect life. And then came Rachel's message. Mother-in-law, remember to heat up the leftovers. Don't waste them. I stared at the words until my eyes blurred. Leftovers. That's what I had become, the remains of a family that no longer valued me. But that night, something inside me woke up. I took a deep breath, stood up, and whispered to myself. It's time to stop serving them. It's time to serve myself. It was well past midnight when I heard the sound of tires on the driveway. Laughter echoed through the walls as the front door opened, Rachel's high heels clicking against the hardwood floor, Brian's deeper laugh following behind. They were still glowing from champagne and applause, unaware that the house they walked into was no longer theirs. I sat quietly in the living room, suitcase by my side, a folder of papers resting on the coffee table. The lamp cast a soft light across the room. When they saw me, Rachel froze. "You're still up?" she asked, her tone polite but sharp. "I wanted to say goodnight," I replied calmly. "And goodbye." Brian frowned. "Goodbye? Mom, what are you talking about?" I handed him an envelope. "You'll understand when you read this." He opened it, confusion turning to shock as he unfolded the document. "This is the deed," he said slowly. "The house deed." Rachel stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Wait, why is your name still on it?" I thought. "You thought wrong," I said softly. "The house was bought with my money. The deed was never transferred. You've been living in my home." Silence swallowed the room. Rachel's face turned pale, Brian's eyes wide. I could have shouted. I could have humiliated them, but I didn't. "Instead," I said, "I gave you everything I had, my savings, my time, my heart. And all I got in return were leftovers." Rachel whispered, "You can't just leave." "I already have," I said. "I'm leaving tonight. I packed my things while you were celebrating." Brian tried to speak, but no words came. He just stood there, realizing that all his comfort had been built on someone else's sacrifice. I picked up my suitcase, turned to them both, and said quietly, "You'll find the rest of the truth in that folder, and one day I hope you learn what family really means." The next morning I sat across from my niece, Samantha, in a small law office downtown. She was a sharp young attorney with my late husband's quiet determination. The folder between us contained everything: bank transfers, receipts, and the house deed with my name printed clearly across the top. Samantha flipped through each page carefully. "Aunt Evelyn, this is airtight," she said. "They can't touch the property. You're the sole owner." I nodded slowly. I never meant to take anything from them. I just wanted to protect what I gave. Samantha smiled faintly. "Sometimes protecting yourself looks like taking back what's yours." Meanwhile, back at the house, Brian and Rachel sat in silence. They had argued until sunrise, blaming each other for everything. Rachel's voice had gone hoarse. "You told me she transferred it." Brian buried his head in his hands. "She was supposed to. I thought she did." Then their phones buzzed at the same time. A formal email from Samantha's office, a notice of meeting to discuss property ownership and financial settlement. Rachel's face drained of color. "She's suing us." Brian shook his head. "No, she's doing it the right way." That afternoon, I met with Hector, the old notary who had handled our family's affairs years ago. He smiled when he saw me. "You're finally here for yourself, Evelyn," he said. "I guess I am," I replied, signing the first set of documents with steady hands. That night, at my friend Linda's home, I opened my laptop and wrote a short post online. It read, 3 years of silence ended with one choice: to respect myself. Sometimes the quietest voice in the room is the one that changes everything. By morning, hundreds of women had shared it, each adding their own story. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. 2 days later, we met at Hector's notary office. The air was heavy, the blinds half drawn. Samantha sat beside me, a calm presence, while Brian and Rachel entered quietly, their faces drawn and pale. They looked smaller, somehow like people who had finally realized the cost of their choices. Hector adjusted his glasses. "We're here to discuss the ownership of the property on Meadow Lane," he said evenly. "Miss Evelyn Parker remains the sole legal owner." Rachel's jaw tightened. "We lived there for years. She said it was our home." Samantha replied, professional but firm. "It was her generosity that allowed you to live there. That generosity doesn't erase her name from the deed." Brian rubbed his temples. "So what happens now?" Samantha laid out 3 options. Option 1, you vacate the house within 30 days. Option 2, repay the total contribution $138,000. Option 3, a shared agreement, Mrs. Parker keeps 60% ownership, and you remain as tenants under her terms. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. You're kicking us out. I met her gaze. No, I'm setting boundaries I should have set years ago. For the first time, Brian looked at me directly. Mom, why didn't you tell us sooner? Why let it go this far? Because I wanted to believe love was enough, I said softly. But love without respect doesn't survive. The room went silent. Even Rachel stopped fidgeting with her ring. Then she whispered I was jealous. You had what I never did, a real family. I didn't know how to handle it. I sighed. Jealousy passes when gratitude begins. You have a chance to start again, Rachel. Don't waste it. We signed the papers quietly after that. No shouting, no anger, just a sense of things falling into place. When it was done, I stood, extended my hand to Brian, and said, Now it's your turn to build something honest. He took it. I will, Mom, I promise. A week later, I returned to the house not as someone seeking approval, but as its rightful owner. The rooms felt different now. They were no longer filled with the tension of walking on eggshells. They were mine again, and I intended to fill them with peace. Brian and Rachel had agreed to stay under the new terms, sharing the property while renting out the guest suite to help repay their debt. The new tenant, Laura Bennett, was a single mother with 2 children. She moved in that Saturday morning with boxes of secondhand furniture and a heart full of hope. When we met, she shook my hand warmly. Thank you for giving me a chance, Miss Parker, she said. I smiled. You're giving me one too. Rachel helped carry boxes upstairs, avoiding eye contact at first. Later, as we unpacked kitchen items together, she finally spoke. I know this must feel strange, having us still here. It feels necessary, I said quietly. Healing takes proximity. We'll figure it out. The days that followed were awkward but civil. Rachel learned to say thank you. Brian started cooking dinner once a week. Sometimes we all sat at the same table, something that hadn't happened in years. Laura's children often joined us, their laughter echoing through the house, filling it with warmth instead of resentment. For the first time, I saw Rachel watching me differently, not as a rival, but as someone she wanted to understand. One afternoon, she knocked on my door. I signed up for family therapy, she said shyly. The counselor said, it's a good start. I nodded. That's all any of us can do, start. That night, I sat on the porch as the sun went down, listening to the sound of the kids playing. The world felt softer, safer. I had my independence, my dignity, and slowly my family was learning what those words meant. 6 months later, life had finally settled into something peaceful. I had moved into a small apartment near the park, quiet, bright, and filled with little things that made me happy. Every morning I brewed coffee, watered my plants, and went for a walk before teaching knitting at the community center. For the first time in years, my days belonged to me. Brian called every few days just to check in. His voice always carried a trace of guilt, but also gratitude. Mom, he said one evening, Rachel's doing better. Therapy's helping. She wants to thank you properly. I smiled through the phone. Tell her I'm proud she's trying. A week later, Rachel asked to meet me for coffee. I almost said no, but something in her message felt genuine. When I arrived, she stood as soon as she saw me. Evelyn, she said softly, thank you for coming. We sat in silence for a moment before she spoke again. I owe you an apology for everything. For the way I treated you, for the things I said. I was angry at the world, and you were the easiest target. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. You didn't deserve that. I nodded slowly. Anger makes us blind, Rachel, but facing it, that's courage. She took out an envelope and slid it across the table. This is the first payment. I promise to buy back our share properly, every month until we've paid what we owe. I looked at the papers, then at her. She wasn't defensive anymore, just sincere. For the first time, I saw the woman my son had fallen in love with. I smiled. Then let's both keep our promises. We walked out of the cafe together, not as enemies, but as 2 women who had learned that respect isn't something you demand, it's something you rebuild, one honest act at a time. A year passed quietly, and I could finally say that peace had become my new normal. My life was simple but full: mornings at the park, afternoons teaching knitting at the community center, evenings spent reading or visiting friends. Sometimes, after class, a few women would stay behind to talk. They'd tell me about their struggles, feeling unseen by their families, losing control of their lives, giving everything until nothing was left. I always told them the same thing. Respect doesn't come from what you give, it comes from what you refuse to accept. Word spread, and before long, people started calling me the lady who took back her house I didn't mind. If my story gave someone courage to stand up for themselves, then it was worth sharing. Brian and the kids visited every Sunday. They always brought flowers or food. One afternoon, while we were having lunch at the park, little Lily handed me a drawing. It was me sitting in a chair wearing a crown. "You're the queen of our family," she said proudly. I laughed, holding back tears. "A queen? Why?" "Because you made everyone listen again," she replied. Even Rachel had changed. She was softer, humbler, more thoughtful. She'd send me messages, sometimes photos of the kids, new recipes she was trying, even updates from therapy. I always replied kindly. Forgiveness, I'd learned, was not for them, it was for me. The house on Meadow Lane was finally theirs, legally and emotionally. Rachel made her final payment in December. When I signed the papers transferring full ownership, I felt nothing but relief. The story had come full circle. I had walked away with nothing but self-respect, and that turned out to be everything I needed. It was a golden Sunday afternoon when I sat by the window of my apartment, sunlight spilling across the table. I was writing in my journal something I started after leaving that house. It helped me make sense of the years that nearly broke me. My phone buzzed. It was a photo from Brian. The whole family gathered around the dinner table, smiling. On the counter behind them sat my old ceramic teapot, the one Rachel once called outdated. Now it stood proudly among polished dishes, a quiet symbol of everything we had overcome. Under the photo, Rachel had written, "Dinner inspired by you, Evelyn. Thank you for teaching us what family means." I smiled and typed back, "You found it yourselves? I just reminded you where to look." After the message sent, I leaned back in my chair and let the peace wash over me. For years, I'd lived believing love meant staying quiet. Now, I knew love also meant knowing when to walk away. My granddaughter Lily video called me not long after. "Grandma," she said excitedly, "I told my teacher you're a superhero. You saved our family." I laughed. "A superhero? What's my power?" She thought for a second. "You make people see what's right even when it's hard." That night, before bed, I opened my journal again and wrote the final entry. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it releases its hold. Walking away isn't the end of love, it's the beginning of self-respect. And self-respect will always be the quietest, strongest form of revenge. As I closed the journal, I looked out at the city lights below. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel forgotten, unseen, or small. I simply felt free. And that, I realized, was the ending I'd been writing toward all along.